Welcome to Deeper with Darshana, where we skip the small talk and dive down into what's raw and real. Pleasure, shame, justice, power, healing, liberation. These essential aspects of our human experience are among my favorite topics to explore, and I'm inviting you to join me. I'm your host, Darshana Avila, somatic sex and trauma expert and creator of the Erotic Wholeness Method. It is my belief that we are erotic by nature, and our erotic nature encompasses so much more than you might realize. Come along as I drop into curious conversations with other passionate pros and sensual seekers, and occasionally share musings of my own. Bring your curiosity, your sacred, messy, beautiful humanity, and all the parts of yourself. And let's go deeper together. Microdosing magic mushrooms, getting yourself out of functional freeze, laying down the people-pleasing, and generally thriving in life. That is what we are talking about today, and I am so psyched to bring this conversation to you. It is me and my dear friend, someone who I really respect and admire a lot, Po Hung Yu, and she is an energy leadership coach, a spiritual mentor, a medicine woman, and a licensed acupuncturist who supports high-level leaders in reconnecting with the truth of who they are beneath all the achievement and the control. And the thing is, I want you to pause because we are all leaders in some capacity. We lead in different areas of our lives, and Po is going to help us understand how we can do that from the place of a soft, open body and a soft, open heart, integrating Taoist wisdom, neuroscience, somatic practice, microdosing guidance, and energetic intelligence. She helps people to rewire their nervous systems, deepen their relationships, and lead from their truest selves. I'm here for it. You're here for it. Welcome to Deeper with Darshana. You're going to love the conversation ahead. All right, welcome back. And I am here with Po Hung Yu today, a dear friend of mine and someone whose work I respect and admire so much. I cannot wait for you to get to know a little bit about the genius that this woman is walking through the world with, bridging ancient and modern modalities that are all about helping us have more flow and connection and aliveness. Po, thanks for being here, my darling.
I'm so happy to be here with you and cannot wait for this conversation.
Yeah, because we have so many places to take it. Is it a fair thing? I know I consider myself very much in the recovering perfectionist people pleaser club. Are you in that club too? Or is it just that you like to help us?
I'm 100% in that category. And I don't know many people who are not, honestly. So, but yes, I have a long history of people pleasing, fixing, rescuing, trying to be a savior, as well as needing to seem like everything is perfect on the outside and procrastinating because something is not perfect.
Okay, so humaning, or modern Western humaning, modern Western woman humaning. I mean, there's a lot of different intersections of identity we can look at this through. So yes, well, for those who are listening that relate, you're in good company. And something that I've really loved learning from you, like I consider myself a pretty educated person in the realm of somatics and nervous systems. And I love how you talk about a state that many of us who might associate with people pleasing and perfectionism are actually in, which is functional freeze. And I know that's a topic you're very passionate about. So I'd love to start this conversation by having you explain that. Like, what does that mean? How can someone be frozen and functioning at the same time? What does this look like? What's going on internally? And we'll see where we flow from there.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that so many more people are in functional freeze than we even realize. And this means essentially that the nervous system is frozen, but we have, all these tools of like willpower and, force that allow us, thank God, in a lot of ways, because we could completely not do anything and collapse, but it allows us to actually function in a world where we need to make money and provide and things like that. I find so many leaders and successful people who are in functional freeze. So it doesn't it's not doesn't discriminate depending on the level of status or finances. And so basically it means there's an incongruency between their internal and external world.
Mm.
And that frozenness, even though maybe they're not collapsed and like in the bed, like, stuck and unable to move, there's a deep disconnection from themselves, their body, their emotions, a lot of numbness there, a lot of distracting. And, ironically, work seems to be a big distraction from my clients that I work with, right? These high level leaders. And so they convince themselves, because they're like doing all these things, they're creating empires, or, running their household, their mothers, and everything is running very well, essentially, but there's a disconnect and unhappiness underneath. And a lot of times this happens because there was a moment or moments in their childhood when something happened where they couldn't fight, they couldn't flee, and they just had to freeze. And it could happen in a situation where it's in the collective, like the pandemic, right? And the way I see it is that we all froze collectively. Maybe not every single person, but I would say the majority of people froze. And over the last few years after that, there was this functional freeze. People started to do things and get back into their life, but there was still this frozenness that happened from the pandemic. And actually, I think that people in the last year or so have started to thaw. So the thawing is a very important part of the process, and allowing that nervous system to actually relax and reconnect. And this connects very much to the de-armoring of the heart work, because there's a protection a lot of us have around our heart, and that frozenness in the nervous system is in direct correlation with that.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot I want to like pull the threads on speaking. I'll just share like personal anecdote is when I hear you describing the functional freeze and like offering that counterpoint of it doesn't mean that we're like curled up in a corner or can't get out of bed. My mother was that person. Like my mom had a very severe mental illness and often was like unable to like get out of bed when things were really bad. And it's like, I always measured myself against that. And because my system does not ever go that route. Like if anything, like I can't sleep, like I've got too much going on, like, so the idea that I could be frozen while I'm also juggling 17 balls in the air and doing all the things, like really was something of an identity crisis when I first started to look around, be like, is this busyness truly generative, or is this busyness part of like those plates that are spinning, so to speak? Like, is this actually what's keeping me in the disconnect? And so, yeah, like that's my version of how my tell, if you will. Are there any other things that if someone's listening to this and be wondering, like, is this me? Like, what are the other ways this could show up? Like very simple day in and day out, practical behaviors, emotional experiences, whatever it might be, that someone could experience if they're in a functional freeze.
So a very common one is at night when the work, like, you put the work aside, then you're disconnecting with social media, right? You go into a zone of TV watching, and, there's nothing wrong with social media or TV, but if you're doing it as a way to escape and distract, being with yourself, being present, or doing things that would be supportive for you, like a nighttime routine, right? Things like that. That's very common. It can also look like feeling very numb and resentful, honestly. And like one client came to me, she realized she was in functional freeze because she went to a funeral and she didn't cry. And it was somebody that she thought she should be crying for, right? That was close to her. And so she thought, why am I not feeling anything? Why do I feel so numb and disconnected? So these are very common things that people experience, and it doesn't have to be so extreme like a funeral, but maybe in general you're not in touch with like the sadness that's underneath, or the anger that you might be feeling, or you don't feel alive, right? So the whole spectrum of emotions is, if you are numb to one area of your life, it's most likely you're numb to the other side as well. So
Right.
gratitude and joy, right, versus the anger and grief. It's all on the same spectrum, just different ends.
Yeah, and that comes up a lot in my work as well, because a lot of people will come to me, it's one side of the spectrum or the other. It's like, I don't want the pain that I'm having, or I really, really want more pleasure. And a lot of people look at it as an either or. And I'm like, well, actually, what's going to happen here is if you want more of anything, you're going to get more of all of it. So sometimes we actually need to be with our pain, with our grief, with our rage in generative, intentional ways to get to the sweetness, the goodness, the joyfulness, the levity, the pleasure. And I'm hearing a very, very similar thing come through you. And I think this is a lovely segue to talk about like two of the, I'll use the word pillars. I don't know if you use these words, but two pillars of your toolkit: microdosing, and then your background as an acupuncturist and with the Taoist arts, like how those come into play here. Both of those are things that have been huge in my journey. Like I have gotten so much from these, what generally feel like far more yin, to use that word, like these feel like gentle. And as someone who is such like an intensity junkie in my way, it's been a practice, and a very welcome one, to invite things in that feel more subtle and more gentle, but actually reap the benefit. So before I get too far gone with my whole story about it, like, let's talk about how those two pillars fit together in the work that you do, and maybe how they're even different, how they can support folks who are examining how to get more connected and come out from this freeze state for themselves.
Mm-hmm. First, I want to describe what microdosing is, because some of your listeners might not even know what it is. So you can microdose with different types of psychedelics. The ones that I guide people with are psilocybin mushrooms, aka magic mushrooms. And so microdosing essentially means that you're taking a subperceptual dose, meaning the dose is so small that you don't have any psychedelic effects, you don't feel high, but you get all of the benefits of mushrooms. And a few, just so people know, is that it increases neuroplasticity, which means that it's easier and more accessible to rewire your brain, your nervous system, your patterns, your conditionings, your addictions, your behaviors, your beliefs. Another is that it reduces the blood flow to the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for trauma responses and fear. And so it supports in decreasing all of that reactivity and trauma response, which is amazing. So your mood elevates because you feel more spacious and free. And then it activates the serotonin receptors, which allows for the elevation of mood, but also it's connected to perception and cognition. And so people have a greater sense of connection to themselves and other people, as well as more creativity, feel more focused and things like that. So, that being said, the thing that I've noticed of being a psychedelic guide and medicine woman while working with leaders is that a lot of people want a quick fix, right? So this is the overlap. As an acupuncturist and working with many people, they will come to me and say, I need to get rid of this thing. And basically they would try to pop a pill, right? And they use a Band-Aid essentially to fix their pain. And I noticed that with the psychedelics and any kind of emotional work as well, a lot of people just want something external to fix them.
Yeah.
And instead, the work with microdosing and what I do is, no, it's from the inside out. And a lot of people are very much wanting peak experiences too.
Right.
Big experiences. And then they don't have to do the work afterwards. the work that I talk about a lot is the integration work.
Yes. Can I just like pause to like shout you out on that line? Like that's, whether it's sex, whether it's psychedelics, whether it's another form of healing, that acculturation toward just collecting peak experiences without having the support, the capacity, the container to really integrate it, it keeps us in the constant chasing and actually fosters more disconnect, more dysregulation is my experience. So whether this is people who have compulsive behaviors around their sexuality and are constantly like jumping from one relationship to another without working with their stuff, or the things that you might see, I think that's so important for people to hear over and over and over again. That integration.
Yeah. It's huge, because what also happens is when you're chasing peak experiences and you're not having the results or transformation that you desire, you think that something is wrong with you. Oh, I'm broken. I can't be fixed. First of all, I think fixing needs to come out of the language around, period, because nobody, I believe, needs to be fixed. Yeah. So the work, yes, the peak experiences are beautiful, but we can have so much transformation in the subtle, in the nuance. That's actually where I find the biggest transformations happen, because we need to implement it into our day-to-day life, right? Like what good is it to have a huge aha if you're not actually doing the work to make it part of your being, like embody that part of you and live in that way. So the microdosing is a great way to do that. And also because people in general are desensitized, right? Most people are on that spectrum of being on the number side, whether you're, you don't have to be super numb, but there's like some kind of disconnection in this way with most people. Doing microdosing allows you to be in the practice of feeling and listening on a more subtle level. And then what that does, we help to sensitize. We become more awake. We're able to tune in to the truth that lives underneath all the noise. And the beautiful thing about microdosing also is that I've noticed it thaws the frozenness. It creates this inner spaciousness so that you can actually access those deeper parts. And the deeper parts could be the trauma, so you can actually process it. It could be your intuition. It could be your power. It could be your fullest expression, right? There's so much that lives in the undercurrents underneath the frozenness.
Yeah. Yeah. Our aliveness lives there. And I use the word eroticism synonymously with aliveness. So yeah, it is encompassing of sexuality when we choose to channel our life force there. But here I hear it as just our vitality, our creativity, all these other facets. And so many of us are walking around deeply distanced from that essence of self. And I orient to that as maybe our greatest collective grief that not everyone is talking about. Like I happen to move in some circles where it is a conversation that gets had, but in a more mainstream context, especially when we could place ourselves in the culture of constant doing and striving and distraction, I think that people don't really necessarily slow down enough to consider like what a loss it is to be so out of touch with your own aliveness. What a loss to be that distanced from your essence. And I'm curious, like, as I share this piece, it makes me want to hear a little bit more about what you refer to as the de-armoring of the heart component of your work. Is this like a good slide in that direction?
And also around Taoism, because the foundation of how I live and my work is, based off of Taoism. My dad was a Jesuit priest turned into a Taoist master, and the foundation of acupuncture is Taoism. And so, and it's just a deep part of my work, but in general, if you could break down Taoism into yin and yang, feminine, masculine energy. And so when we talk about the heart is such a yin energy, right? And so it's always relative. For example, the mind is very yang compared to the body, which is more yin. The heart is more yin compared to the body. So the body is more yang, compared to the heart. So it's
Well,
all
there's like a hierarchy of yin and yang in ours.
it's all about relativity.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so, yes. So essentially, when we tap into our heart energy, we're tapping into our most feminine, well, not, it's a big feminine energy. And so a lot of protection has happened or to defend ourselves as children, as adults. And it's very common in Chinese medicine. We talk about the heart protector, which is called the pericardium in Western medicine. And it's literally the heart protector. But I find that a lot of people's pericardium are frozen, are walls.
Can we define a pericardium for those who might be like, huh?
It's literally the physical heart protector.
So it's like a sheath around the heart?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so as we start to thaw the frozenness in our nervous system, the more that we surrender, because the yin energy is all about receptivity and surrender and relaxing and accepting and just being with what is, then the armor around the heart starts to release. And there's not that fear that everything and everyone is to be feared. And we get to allow that love to actually come through, which is something that most people are afraid of, by the way.
Right. And that's exactly what was on the tip of my tongue. I was like, this on the one hand sounds like the most gorgeous aspiration. And then also is fucking terrifying. Like, especially if you have managed to create that life built on your functional freeze. So the very things that we want might I'm tripping over my words now. They might also be the things that we fear. And I know this in myself. It's been a part of my journey of healing and wholeness and getting to live the life I really want to be living. And day in and day out with my clients, it's like, yeah, everyone comes to me because they're like, I want an awesome sex life. I want to have thriving intimacy. I want to feel at home in my body. And I'm scared out of my mind because actually takes to get to that point. So how do you help people create a bridge then between the desire and the fear of actualizing the desire?
So as you can probably tell, my work is very grounded and practical, but also mystical. I call myself a practical mystic.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because it's like, what's good with being connected to the energy if we're not bringing it here into our humanity, into our everyday life? Yes. And so the 1% is how I bridge it. Because a lot of people, you talked about at the top of this podcast, perfectionism. I find that perfectionism is a huge block to people's healing and transformation because they have an idea of how long it should take, why hasn't happened, or they need to show up in a very specific way in order for them to have that thing. And I say, no, that's absolutely not true. The 1%, just like compounding interest, right? In the stock market, it's the same thing with healing and transformation, because 1% innately means we are being radically compassionate and loving and kind and gentle with ourselves. For example, some people will say, I can't meditate for 20 minutes or 10 minutes a day because I have my family and I'm working all the time, blah, blah, blah. And I say, you don't have to. Just meditate. Take a moment, 30 seconds to breathe throughout the day here and there. Guess what? You're going to have so much more transformation than forcing yourself to meditate for 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's what I'm hearing you talk about, and I talk about it all the time, is widening the application of microdosing, right? So sure, you can microdose mushrooms, and I'm not here to either push or not on that one. It's benefited me, but you can microdose mindfulness. 20 seconds. That's what I have heard is the magic number. 20 seconds of savoring whatever it is that you are choosing to be present with. So like I went on a walk the other day, and it's, as wintry as northern as the Bay Area gets, it's like, it's been cold, it's been rainy. And all of a sudden there's this rose bush in full bloom in one of my neighbor's yards. And I just buried my face in the rose and I huffed
for 20 seconds. And then I went on my way. It's like microdosing presence is really where it's at, talking about the compound interest of that, because then it builds over time, being mindful of how you transition. That's a big one that I love to talk about, like going from A to B, which we all do that however many times a day. Like, what if you slowed it down? What if you gave yourself 1 extra minute? Like it adds up.
It really adds up. It's been profound for my clients. Like this 1% rule has been a game changer. Celebrating every 1% win. So how often do people say, oh, I have nothing to celebrate unless it's something big? But no, guess what? Then there's all these celebrations that you're sweeping under the rug because you have this idea and expectation of what a celebration is. Yeah. And so there's all these ways that we have repressed the good in our life. I think there's definitely an attachment to suffering and disconnection, not because consciously people want to, it's because it's like a security blanket. It's very comfortable. It's known.
It's familiar. Exactly. It's familiar.
And then we come out of that into the unknown space where we have more joy, more connection, more intimacy. It feels scary because it's not familiar, right? And so part of the process is this titration. This 1% allows us to work with our own capacity, but at the same time, expanding it, right? Yeah. And so we get to work with these edges.
Yeah. And I think this goes hand in hand. You made a mention before, you said something that I also agree with, which is that like, we're not broken in need of fixing. And we live in a culture that is hell-bent on convincing us of exactly that at every turn. So perfectionism really like colludes with that too. This idea that if only we do things better, if only we do it just so, if only we do all the things, right? So we take personal responsibility for everything, and then we create a personal failing. So when you talk about that, like attachment to suffering, we're just so used to being in that cycle in so many contexts. This is a major, like, deprogramming that we're speaking of here. And I want to bring it back to the literal medicine of microdosing and of psilocybin when it comes to then how that expanded neuroplasticity, how the things that are going on for us physiologically and what's happening to our nervous system as we're gently and subtly change, how it helps us be equipped for that and be able to meet what once felt scary because it's unfamiliar now as something that, this could be good for me. This can become familiar to me. Like, I think that that's a really important part of the story that people need to hear.
Yes. And I would love to give an analogy so people can really understand neuroplasticity even better. Imagine you have a house on the top of a mountain that's full of snow. It just snowed. And now the snow is soft. And you drive your car down the hill, down the mountain. And now there's these tracks, right, where the wheels were. Now you go back to the house and now it's frozen. The snow is frozen. Now these tracks are deeply ingrained. This is the wiring of like deep conditioning patterns in the nervous system. You go through the same thing. You have a habitual way of moving through life or with a substance, etc. And so the thawing, the microdosing helps to melt the snow so that you could create a new pathway, right? A new pathway and create a new programming, a new story, a new wiring. And the beautiful part about microdosing is that sometimes you'll miss it. And so that's why it's important to do that work, whether it's a guide or on your own, being vigilant and saying, oh, I shifted. Something happened here and I celebrate that. That's why that 1% celebration is so key, because a lot of people are expecting something massive and then they don't see how much they have changed, and skipping that actually keeps them from expanding even more. And so the noticing of the transformation is just as important.
It is. And I'll bring my own very recent experience. Like, a celebration for me is that I had a very contentious moment with a beloved, and like I was in my activation and I made a different move than I would usually do. So I'm a fight nervous system who like I'm gonna go on the attack, and it like that energy came up in me, and then I was able to be like, wait, but here's what's going on. I'm actually really sad right now. Like it's and it's not, this is not a bells and whistles moment, but it is actually huge in its impact and its implication for me, for them, like because now
a ripple effect that would happen, right?
Yeah, because ultimately everything that we're doing is in service to our desire for connection, whether we're talking about connecting more to our own selves, as we spoke about earlier, being connected to your heart, to your essence, being connected and present and intimate and available to our relationships with others. So that is really what it's all about, huh?
100%. And I think a lot of times that we haven't been taught how to connect. And so it's in those subtle moments that are so juicy. It's so potent and so juicy. And I think that's really one of my biggest teachings is how can we allow ourselves to feel how good this moment is? And that could mean even the grief. Like I remember when my dog Siba passed and I was in such deep grief and crying, but I remember I had this moment of also feeling gratitude at the same time. And this is a beautiful part of expanding our capacity, because then we get to expand the range of what's possible in our feeling sense. And that's everything. But it happened a little at a time.
Yeah, microdoses. I mean, I'm not trying to be punny, but it's such an apt, like it's such an apt term, and I think it's a really important. I'll use a word again, like a deprogramming in a culture that is everything has to be supersized, and you know, like we chase big impact. Like this is the opposite of that, and with what's happening in our collective right now. I mean, whatever way you want to look at the many overlaps of craziness in the world, it's like to be able to find the beauty in a given moment, to be able to be so present with the immediacy of what's happening. And this could be you with your body. This could be you in a relationship with another person. This could be you in your environment. Like we need that right now. We need to be attending to what's beautiful, what's good, what's nourishing, so that we can show up to meet what might be beyond our immediate sphere that isn't. I mean, that's my ethos anyhow. So I love that you all to that.
I agree. And, you know, I would also add that like this piece around people really believe that more or going faster or doing more is actually going to get them faster. I actually have not seen that to be the case. The more that we do the 1%, the more that we slow down, the more that we feel, the more that we surrender, actually accelerates everything. Yeah. Everything. I mean, surrendering is, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this who's listening, but I remember back in the day, like, let's say I'm in a relationship and I used to be an anxious attachment style person. And I would call somebody and they wouldn't call me back right away. And I'd start getting anxious. Mm-hmm. The more I thought about it and, you know, over and over again, it just like, it wasn't happening and made me more overwhelmed and anxious. But the moment I surrendered and let go, guess what? They contacted me, right? So there's always these experiences that you can look back on your life. The moment you chose to slow down, to create space, to just be and trust.
Yes.
That's when things shift.
Yeah. Because when you're holding
from the doing, it's not from like the forcing.
No, and when you're holding so tightly, you know, I'm doing the gesture of a clenched fist right now. If you're just listening to this, what can get in here? But when you soften open and have these open palms of receptivity, and that's, you know, that's a pain. You can use that metaphor because it's true in our hearts. It's true in our nervous systems. It's true in our life. It happens for me constantly in entrepreneurship, you know, when I'm like, oh, I've got to create this thing or I've got to get this just right. And it feels so high stakes and I'm trying to push a boulder up a mountain. And then I stop and like level set myself and be like, wait. there's probably a gentler way to do this. There's a kinder way to go about this. Things magically fall into place. And maybe it's not the thing I thought was going to happen. That's another piece that in my experience with microdosing and in this conversation, it's like, there's, to bring a little more of that mystical quality in, I see this as also making more space for synchronicity, for you. I'm going to use the word for the divine, like for spirit, for whatever word it resonates for you as a listener. It's like we're allowing space for that to come in and surprise and delight us and maybe show us something we didn't even know we needed or wanted to see, right? Like it's a really beautiful spaciousness that opens.
That's the thing microdosing does. It creates space. Everybody, because it creates space that you can have more awareness and make a different choice, and that supports with the rewiring. But also I want to share about mycelium. Mycelium is the roots of mushrooms in the earth, and they are connectors. If you watch Fantastic Fungi, the documentary, you can see. Yeah, it's a great documentary, and it's beautifully created. And you see, they talk about the mycelium, and the myceliums are connectors, and it allows us to connect with each other. So the medicine, the mushroom medicine, is that they are supporting in that connection, not only with ourselves, but the divine, with nature, with our community. And it's really, really powerful. And when we are working in conjunction with the medicine, that's when the next level transformation happens. We're not popping it in our pill like we would like with prescription medicine. Like a lot of Western culture teaches us just to pop the medicine. With microdosing, with psychedelic medicine, it's very important to be intentional and to work in partnership with the medicine, because mushrooms are intelligent. And I like to call them, which was coined by my mentor, somatic surgeons. So they basically go into they know exactly what your nervous system and body is needing support with. And then they allow that wisdom to be felt. So for example, I had a client, she started microdosing and she started feeling a tightness in her jaw that she never feels. If she didn't have me as her guide, because I'm also a somatic practitioner, she would have just thought, oh, this isn't working, or I'm getting a side effect, something is wrong, right? No, it's not true. The mushrooms are showing you exactly what it is that you need, that maybe you haven't seen or felt or acknowledged. And guess what? She, from that experience, felt this, when I said drop into your body, feel the sensations in your jaw. She realized she needed to share an abuse that happened to her as a child with her father and with her partner that she never shared with anybody. After that, the jaw pain went away. And then she naturally felt this desire to start singing and moving the energy through her throat. And so this is like one example of how the mushrooms communicate through our body wisdom.
And an example of the need for that somatic intelligence that a guide can provide, the integrative support. So yeah, so much beauty here, so much wisdom. Okay, so as we get ready to wrap this up, if someone is really excited to lean in, to learn more about how they might bring microdosing into their lives, how they can unthaw, or is that the word? No, thaw out. Thaw, wait a minute. No. Thaw their functional freeze. Like, how does someone who's just stepping a foot onto this path begin?
Well, they can follow me on social media and start to learn that way. They're welcome to DM me, and I'm happy to get on a call with people. I can recommend a blend and a protocol to support them as well. So there's all kinds of directions, but I think the first thing is feel inside yourself if you have a call. The medicine will call you and say, oh, I'm ready for a different kind of support. And I'm that person who can help them on the path if they're interested. I have different levels. I work with people with microdosing. I work people with low doses. I also work with people with macro doses. But I find that most people are, gravitate towards microdosing because it's accessible and it's not as, they don't feel out of control. People are scared of the psychedelic effect. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And we will have links to your socials and to your website and everything in the show notes. Poe, it's been so fun to be in this conversation with you. Thank you. I really respect and adore you. If there's one last little deepening drop of insight that you want to impart to folks, something either that needs a little more emphasis or that we didn't get to say, what would that be?
You know, because I just got off a call with the client, I am inspired to share that putting yourself first is not selfish. And what I have found is that most people are prioritizing everything and everyone else, and then they're moving through life on empty or close to empty. You cannot serve and live in the fullness of your expression and your purpose and service if you are not full yourself. And so my invitation to your listeners is, how can you 1% at a time shift the direction to you and allow yourself to choose yourself more and more? And this is always the case. My clients are always surprised because I always tell them, when you do your own inner work, everything around you is going to change. So my client, she came to me on the verge of divorce. Her son was suicidal. And I said, I know you want to fix your son. You want to save him. You want to fix your relationship. But I'm going to tell you, don't do any of that. We're going to just focus on you. And guess what? Her son is no longer suicidal, and she saved her relationship, because your energy ripples out to everyone around you. So I talk to leaders, right? So you as a parent are a leader in your household. You as a CEO or founder are the leader of your team, in your ecosystem. So your energetics, I teach about energetic intelligence. Your energetics are literally impacting every aspect of your life. So of course it makes sense, if you want to be efficient and tap into the accelerated transformation, to focus on your energy and then see the magic ripple out from there.
All right, y'all, you heard it. Focus on yourself, which AKA means put down the people pleasing.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Poe. So great to be in this conversation. Everyone listening, I hope you loved something that you heard here today. And if so, would you please go ahead and make sure you were subscribed, drop us a comment, share this with somebody who would benefit from hearing about how they can come out from their functional freeze and start this journey for themselves. And I will be back with you next week for another episode of Deeper with Darshana. Thank you so much for being with us.